But as a man to whom a dreadful loss falls in a far land, and he knows it not, but coming back he learns it, and the loss so pains him that he sickens nigh to death. So fared it with Geraint, who being pricked in combat with the followers of the Moors, bled underneath his armor secretly, and so rode on, nor told his gentle wife what ailed him, hardly knowing it himself, till his eye darkened and his helmet wagged at a sudden swerving of the road. Though happily down on a bank of grass, the prince without a word from his horse fell, and Enid heard the clashing of his fall. Suddenly came, and at his side, all pale, dismounting, loosed the fastenings of his arms, nor let her true hand falter, nor blue eye moisten till she had lighted on his wound, and tearing off her veil of faded silk, had barred her forehead to the blistering sun, and swayed the hurt that drained her dear lord's life. Then after all was done that hand could do, she rested, and her desolation came upon her, and she wept beside the way. And many passed, but none regarded her, for in that realm of lawless turbulence, a woman weeping for her murdered mate was cared as much for as a summer shower. One took him for a victim of Earl Durham, nor dared to waste a perilous pity on him. Another, hurrying past, a man at arms, rode on a mission to the bandit earl. Half whistling, half singing a coarse song, he drove the dust against her veilless eyes. Another flying from the wrath of Durham. Before, an ever-fancied arrow made the long way smoke beneath him in his fear, at which her palfrey whining lifted heel, and scoured into the coppices and was lost, while the great charger stood, grieved like a man. But at the point of noon, the huge Durham, broad-faced with under fringe of russet beard, bound on a foray, rolling eyes of prey, came riding with 100 lances up. But ere he came, like one that hails a ship, cried out with a big voice, "What, is he dead?" "No, no, not dead," she answered in all haste. "Would some of your people take him up, and bear him hence out of this cruel sun?" "Most sure am I, quite sure he is not dead." Then said Earl Durham, "Well, if he be not dead, why wail ye for him thus? Ye seem a child. And be he dead, I count you for a fool. Your wailing will not quicken him, dead or not. Ye mar a comely face with idiot tears. Since the face is comely, some of you, here, take him up and bear him to our hall, and if he live, we will have him of our band, and if he die, why, earth has earth enough to hide him. See ye take the charger too, a noble one." He spake and passed away, but left 2 brawny spearmen, who advanced, each growling like a dog, when his good bone seems to be plucked at by village boys, who love to vex him eating, and he fears to lose his bone, and lays his foot upon it, gnawing and growling. So the ruffians growled, fearing to lose, and all for a dead man, their chance booty from the morning's raid. Yet raised and laid him on a litter bier, such as they brought upon the forays out, for those that might be wounded, laid him on it, all in the hollow of his shield, and took, and bore him to the naked hall of Durm, his gentle charger following him unled, and cast him and the bier in which he lay down on an oaken settle in the hall, and then departed hot in haste to join their luckier mates, but growling as before and cursing their lost time, and the dead man, and their own earl, and their own souls, and her. They might as well have blessed her. She was deaf to blessing or to cursing, save from one. For so long hours sat Enid by her lord, there in the naked hall, propping his head and chafing his pale hands, and calling to him, till at last he wakened from his swoon, and found his own dear bride, propping his head, and chafing his faint hands, and calling to him, and felt the warm tears falling on his face, and said to his own heart, She weeps for me, and yet lay still, and feigned himself as dead, that he might prove her to the uttermost, and said to his own heart, She weeps for me. But in the falling afternoon returned the huge Earl Durm with plunder to the hall. His lusty spearmen followed him with noise, each hurling down a heap of things that rang. Against his pavement cast his lance aside, and doffed his helm, and then there fluttered in, half bold, half frighted, with dilated eyes, a tribe of women dressed in many hues, and mingled with the spearmen, and Earl Durm struck with a knife's haft hard against the board, and called for flesh and wine to feed his spears, and men brought in whole hogs and quarter beeves, and all the hall was dim with steam of flesh, and none spake word, but all sat down at once, and ate with tumult in the naked hall, feeding like horses when you hear them feed, till Enid shrank far back into herself, to shun the wild ways of the lawless tribe. But when Earl Durm had eaten all he would, he rolled his eyes about the hall, and found a damsel drooping in a corner of it. Then he remembered her, and how she wept, and out of her there came a power upon him, and rising on the sudden, he said, Eat. I never yet beheld a thing so pale. God's curse, it makes me mad to see you weep. Eat, look yourself, good luck had your good man. For were I dead, who is it would weep for me? Sweet lady, since never I first drew breath, have I beheld a lily like yourself, and so there lived some color in your cheek. There is not one among my gentle women were fit to wear your slipper for a glove. But listen to me, and by me be ruled, and I will do the thing I have not done. For ye shall share my earldom with me, girl, and we will live like two birds in one nest, and I will fetch you forage from all fields, for I compel all creatures to my will. He spoke. The brawny spearman let his cheek bulge with unswallowed peace, and, turning, stared, while some whose souls the old serpent long had drawn down as the worm draws in the withered leaf, and makes it earth, hissed at other's ear. What shall not be recorded, women they. Women are what had been those gracious things, but now desired the humbling of their best, yea, would have helped him to it. And all at once they hated her, who took no thought of them, but answered in low voice, her meek head yet, drooping, I pray you, of your courtesy, heaving as he is, to let me be. She spake so low, he hardly heard her speak, but like a mighty patron satisfied with what himself had done so graciously, assuming that she thanked him adding, Yea, eat and be glad, for I count you mine. She answered meekly, How should I be glad henceforth in all the world at anything, until my lord arise and look upon me? Here the huge earl cried out upon her talk, as all but empty heart and weariness, and sickly nothing, suddenly seized on her, and bare her by the main violence to the board, and thrust the dish before her, crying, Eat. No, no, said Enid, vexed, I will not eat till yonder man upon the bier arise, and eat with me. Drink then, he answered, here, and filled a horn with wine, and held it to her. Lo, I myself, when flushed with fight or hot, God's curse with anger, often I myself. Before I well have drunken, scarce can eat. Drink therefore, and the wine will change thy will. Not so, she cried, by heaven, I will not drink, till my dear Lord arise and bid me do it, and drink with me, and if he rise no more, I will not look at wine until I die. It's really bad form, if you don't even know if someone's dead, to start trying to woo his wife, or at least let the woman mourn a little bit. Maybe even go through the mourning period before you make things look bad, Well, don't make things look bad, but it does make things look bad if one's in the... At this he turned all red and paced his hall, now gnawed his under, now his upper lip, and coming up close to her, and said at last, Girl, for I see ye scorn my courtesies, take warning, yonder man is surely dead, and I compel all creatures to my will. Not eat nor drink, and wherefore wail for one who put your beauty to this flout and scorn, by dressing it in rags. Amazed am I, beholding how ye butt against my wish, that I forbear you thus. Cross me no more, at least put off to please me this poor gown, this silken rag, this beggar woman's weed. I love that beauty should go beautifully, for see ye not my gentlewomen here, how gay, how suited to the house of one who loves that beauty should go beautifully. Rise therefore, robe yourself in this, obey. He spoke, and one among his gentlewomen displayed a splendid silk, a foreign loom, were like a shoaling sea, the lovely blue, played into green, and thicker down the front with the jewels than the sward with the drops of dew. When, all night long, a cloud clings to the hill, and with the dawn ascending lets the day strike where it clung, so thickly shone the gems, and Enid answered, harder to be moved than hardest tyrants in their day of power, with lifelong injuries burning unavenged. And now their hour is come. And Enid said, that's sort of the most risky one to, give into. Food and drink, but you'll look nice in this, wear this. It's like, and this poor gown, my dear lord, found me first, and loved me serving in my father's hall. In this poor gown I rode with him to court, and there the queen arrayed me like the sun. In this poor gown he bade me clothe myself, when now we rode upon this fatal quest of honor where no honor can be gained. And this poor gown I will not cast aside, until himself arise a living man, and bid me cast it. I have griefs enough. Pray you be gentle, pray you let me be. I never loved, can never love but him. Yea, God, I pray you of your gentleness, he being as he is, to let me be. Then strode the brute earl up and down his hall, and took his russet beard between his teeth, last coming up quite close, and in his mood, crying, I count it of no more avail. Deign to be gentle, then ungentle with you. Take my salute, unknightly, with flat hand, however lightly, smote her on the cheek. Then Enid, in her utter helplessness, and since she thought he had not dared to do it, except he surely knew my lord was dead, sent forth a sudden sharp and bitter cry, as of a wild thing taken in the trap, which sees the trapper coming through the wood. This heard Geraint, and grasping at his sword, lay beside him, and the hollow shield, made but a single bound, and with the sweep of it, shore through the swarthy neck, and like a ball, the russet-bearded head rolled on the floor. So died Earl Durham by him. He counted dead, and all the men and women in the hall rose when they saw the dead man rise, and fled yelling, as from a spectre. And the two were left alone together, and he said, Enid, I have used you worse than that dead man, done you more wrong. We have both undergone that trouble which has left me thrice your own. Henceforward I will rather die than doubt, and here I lay this penance on myself, not through mine own ears, heard you yestermorn. You thought me sleeping, but I heard you say that you were no true wife. I swear I will not ask your meaning in it. I do believe you yourself against yourself, and will henceforward rather die than doubt. And Enid could not say one tender word, she felt so bluntly and stupid in the heart. She only prayed him, Fly, they will return and slay you. Fly, your charger is without, my palfrey lost. Then, Enid, shall you ride behind me? Yea, said Enid, let's go. And moving out, they found the stately horse, who, now no more a vassal to the thief, but free to stretch his limbs in lawful fight, neighed with all gladness as they came, and stooped with a low whinny toward the pair, and she kissed the white star upon his noble front. Glad also, then Geraint upon the horse, mounted and reached a hand, and on his foot she set her own and climbed. He turned his face and kissed her climbing, and she cast her arms about him, and at once they rode away, and never yet, since high in paradise, o'er the 4 rivers, the first roses blew, came purer pleasure unto mortal kind than lived through her, who in that perilous hour put hand to hand beneath her husband's heart, and fell him hers again. She did not weep, but o'er her meek eyes came a happy mist, like that which kept the heart of Eden green before the useful trouble of the rain. Yet not so misty were her meek blue eyes, as not to see before them on the path, right in the gateway of the bandit hold, a knight of Arthur's court who laid his lance in rest and made it as if to fall upon him. Then, fearing for his hurt and loss of blood, she, with her mind all full of what had chanced, shrieked to the stranger, Slay not a dead man. The voice of Enid, said the knight, but she, beholding it was Geraint, son of Enid, was moved so much the more, and shrieked again, O cousin, slay not him who gave you life. And Geraint, moving frankly forward, spake, My lord Geraint, I greet you with all love. I took you for a bandit knight of Durham, and fear not, Enid, I should fall upon him, who love you, prince, with something of the love wherewith we love the heaven that chastens us. For once, when I was up so high in pride, that I was halfway down the slope to hell, by overthrowing me you threw me higher, now made a knight of Arthur's table round. And since I knew this earl when I myself was half abandoned in my lawless hour, I came the mouthpiece of our king to Durham. The king is close behind me, bidding him disband himself and scatter all his powers. Submit and hear the judgment of the king. He hears the judgment of the King of Kings, cried the wan prince. And lo, the powers of Durham are scattered, and he pointed to the field, where huddled here and there on mound and knoll, were men and women, staring and aghast, while some yet fled, and then he plainlier told how the huge earl lay slain within his hall. But when the knight besought him, follow me, prince, to the camp, and in the king's own ear speak what has chanced. Ye surely have endured strange chances here alone. That other flushed, and hung his head, and halted in reply, fearing the mild face of the blameless king, and after madness acted, question asked, till Edurn crying, if ye will not go to Arthur, then will Arthur come to you. Enough, he said, I follow. And they went, but Enid in their going had two fears, one from the bandits scattered in the field, and one from Edurn. Every now and then, when Edurn reined his charger at her side, she shrank a little. In a hollow land from which old fires have broken, men may fear fresh and ruin. He perceiving said, fair and dear cousin, you that most had cause to fear me, fear no longer. I am changed. Yourself were first the blameless cause to make my nature's prideful sparkle in the blood, break into furious flame, being repulsed by Yenneil and yourself. I schemed and wrought until I overturned him, then set up with one main purpose ever at my heart, my haughty jousts, and took a paramour, did her mock honor as the fairest fair, and toppling over all antagonism, so waxed in pride that I believed myself unconquerable. For I was well nigh mad, and but for my main purpose in these jousts, I should have slain your father, seized yourself. I lived in hope that some time you would come to these my lists with him, whom best you loved, and there, poor cousin, with your meek blue eyes, the truest eyes that ever answered heaven, behold me overturn and trample on him. Then, had you cried or knelt or prayed to me, I should not less have killed him. Notice how pray and worship doesn't always mean, treating people as a divinity. And so you came, but once you came, and with your own true eyes I beheld the man you loved. I speak as one who speaks of a service done him. Overthrow my proud self and my purpose 3 years old, and set his foot upon me, and give me life. There I was broken down, there I was saved, though thence I rode all shamed, hating the life he gave me, meaning to be rid of it. And all the penance the queen laid upon me was but to rest a while within her court, were first as sullen as a beast new caged, and waiting to be treated like a wolf, because I knew my deeds were known. I found, instead of scornful pity or pure scorn, such fine reserve and noble reticence, matters so kind yet stately, such a grace of tenderest courtesy, that I began to glance behind me at my former life, and find that it had been the wolf's indeed. And oft I talked with Dubric, the high saint, who, with mild heat of holy oratory, subdued me somewhat to that gentleness which, when it weds with manhood, makes a man. And you were often there about the queen, but saw me not, or marked not if you saw. Nor did I care or dare to speak with you, but kept myself aloof till I was changed. And fear not, cousin, I am changed indeed. He spoke, and Enid easily believed. like simple noble natures, credulous are of what they long for, good in friend or foe. They're most in those who most have done them ill. And when they reached the camp, the king himself advanced to greet them, and beholding her, though pale yet unhappy, asked her not a word, but went apart with Edgern, whom he held in converse for a little, and returned, and gravely smiling lifted her from horse, and kissed her with all pureness, brother-like, and showed an empty tent allotted her, and glancing for a minute, till he saw her pass into it, turned the prince and said, Prince, when of late ye prayed me for my leave to move to your own land, and there defend your marches, I was pricked with some reproof, as one that let foul wrong stagnant and be, by having looked too much through alien eyes, and wrought too long with delegated hands, not used my own. But now, behold me come, to cleanse this common sewer of all my realm, with Edgern and with others. Have ye looked at Edgern? Have ye seen how nobly changed? This work of his is great and wonderful. His very face with change of heart is changed. The world will not believe a man repents, and this wise world of ours is mainly right. Full seldom doth a man repent or use both grace and will to pick the vicious quitch of blood and custom wholly out of him, and make all clean and plant himself afresh. Edgern has done it, weeding all his heart, as I weed this land before I go. I therefore made him of our table round, not rashly, but have proved him every way, one of our noblest, our most valorous, sanest, and most obedient. And indeed, this work of Edgern wrought upon himself, after a life of violence, seems to me 1,000-fold more great and wonderful than if some knight of mine, risking his life, my subject with my subjects under him, should make an onslaught single on a realm of robbers, though he slew them one by one, and were himself nigh wounded to the death. So spake the king. Low bowed the prince, and felt his work was neither great nor wonderful, and passed to Enid's tent, and thither came the king's own leech to look into his hurt, and Enid tended on him there, and there, her constant motion round him, and the breath of her sweet tendance hovering over him, filled all the genial courses of his blood with deeper and with ever deeper love, as the southwest that blowing Bala lake fills all the sacred Dee. So passed the days. But while Geraint lay healing of his hurt, the blameless king went forth, and cast his eyes on each of all whom Uther left in charge, long since to guard the justice of the king. He looked and found them wanting. And as now men weed the white horse on the Berkshire hills, to keep him bright and clean as heretofore, he rooted out the slothful officer, are guilty, which, for the bribe, had winked at wrong, and in their chairs set up a stronger race, with hearts and hands, and sent 1,000 men, till the wastes, and moving everywhere, cleared the dark places, and let in the law, and broke the bandit holds, and cleansed the land. And then, when Geraint was whole again, they passed with Arthur to Caerleon upon Usk. There the great queen once more embraced her friend, and clothed her in apparel like the day. And though Geraint could never take again that comfort from their converse which he took before the queen's fair name was breathed upon, he rested well content that all was well. Thence, after tarrying for a space, they rode, and 50 knights rode with them to the shores of Severn, and they passed to their own land. And there he kept the justice of the king, so vigorously yet mildly, that all hearts applauded, and the spiteful whisper died. And being ever the foremost in the chase, and victor at the tilt and tournament, they called him the great prince, and man of men. But Enid, whom her ladies loved to call Enid the fair, a grateful people named Enid the good, and in their halls arose the cry of children, Enids and Geraints of times to be, nor did he doubt her more, but rested in her faulty, till he crowned a happy life with a fair death, and fell against the heathen of the northern sea in battle, fighting for the blameless king. Now, pagan, heathen, they're not really religious groups. They're homes, and calling people Gentile and stuff like that. It's just not. But far better than physical beauty, wealth, status, is a good character. So being known as the most beautiful in the land is nothing compared to being witnessed as a good person.